Hello everyone, welcome to the Jewish Week Online. We're here at the Economist event in New York City. Human potential, the next level of competition. What does it mean to be an innovator? It takes a lot. It takes the right language, it takes the right personality, it takes the right vision to truly succeed. Let's take a closer look and learn more about how one can become an effective leader. Language is an important tool to connect really to anybody. And a lot of times, especially in business, sometimes language gets lost. In these times, in this market, when you're even trying to get a job or trying to convey earnings or whatever it is, language is the key that sometimes organizations and people can't bring to the forefront. And you're a leader in understanding and trying to bring the importance of language into companies. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts about how language is being used now, and a little bit about your book.
Right. Well, my book is called You Are What You Speak because it's really about language and identity and how much you say about yourself as soon as you open your mouth and how much you reveal about who you are and then also how you want to be seen, who you want to be. And I think in language and business, the mistake a lot of businesses make is that they really want to elevate their language in some way to show that they're some kind of a lead or that they're on the cutting edge or that they're faster and more innovative. And what it leads to is a little bit too much jargon, a little bit too quick of a tendency to adopt the latest buzzwords to try to show that they're up to date. When really the best way to use language, when it's used really well, it's about connection. Language is a two-way street between you and the person you're communicating with. And so the best use of language is the closest to the person you're trying to reach, not the one that sets you in some kind of different place, either at a higher level or as a member of a different group. And so when I talk to people in business or any other thing, including journalism, I really recommend the clearest, most human, most connecting and concrete language you can come up with, and less of the buzzwords, less of the sort of abstractions, less of the kind of the management jargon buzzing around out there, because if you're using those kind of words, chances are everybody else is trying to do the same thing too. They're all trying the same trick at the same time. You don't need to get any competitive advantage. You just end up sounding like a sort of jargon machine.
And I just want to touch a little bit about the economy now. And there are a lot of businesses that are trying to do more with less, and language is key. Your message is key. What are some quick tips that you can give on sort of effective language?
Well, I think that you can overthink language. There's no, when, for example, coming up with a brand name, there's no name that doesn't have some possibility of, meaning the wrong thing in some language or offending somebody or confusing someone. Nothing is perfect. But you want to think about language again in that context of connection that brings people together, and not just innovative or different or weird for its own sake. People will often just latch on the same trends all at the same time. So you'll see some word like thought leadership, a phrase that I don't remember seeing 5 or 10 years ago. Was all of a sudden everybody in the world is a thought leader. Now I think that's a sort of useless piece of jargon. All the way to brand names. I think people have been ending all their names in LY recently. There's a whole huge spate of new companies ending their names in LY, thinking that was going to look cool and sort of internet-y based on the bit.ly URL shortening service. 5 years ago, people were leaving the E out of words that can be left out. So Flickr, the photo sharing site, was FLICKR, and people were doing all of that at the same time. So these trends, they catch on, everybody does it, nobody looks distinctive, right, and then they move on to the next thing. So try to think about the eternal, try to think about the human.
And, let's say for job seekers, when they're trying to connect to that perfect job,
right,
in doing, because you are a brand, you are branding yourself to a company.
Yeah.
What would you recommend for job seekers? The right language to pitch themselves.
I think be who you are and not who you think you should look like, because people who aren't really master actors, if they're trying on a level of language, if they're trying to use long words that they're not comfortable with, or if they're trying to use long, complicated sentences, nobody feels comfortable, trying to deal with someone who's struggling themselves through their sentences. I think in The Economist, we like short words, short sentences, write the way you speak, and keep it real and concrete. So I would advise people to really put aside as the most complicated ways of expressing yourself, and really embrace the kind of the earthy and the real, because people get a sense of belonging when they do that. They feel like they have something in common with you. Be who you are. In other words, it really is just so much easier for everyone.
And I mean, you've done a lot of research into this. What has been the most ridiculous things that you've seen?
Oh, well, I think one of the most interesting things is that people associate things that have nothing to do with intelligence or sophistication with that. So Americans tend to hear British accents and think that someone with a British accent is almost automatically sophisticated. Well, if you've been to the UK, you can wander the streets and see people looking like dapper gentlemen, and you can see a man vomiting in the street from too much at the pub. Here in America, people think that New York accents sound a little poorly educated. And I'm from the South, and a lot of Americans have the stereotype that Southerners are a little slow. Just because the language moves a little slower doesn't mean the mind is necessarily moving slower. And so, in my book, I really try to push back against a lot of these stereotypes. They're about things that have nothing to do with general intelligence and wits.
Mm-hmm. And where do you see language going? Obviously, you touched upon like trends. Mm-hmm. Where do you think language is going in the next even 3 to 4 years?
Right. Well, I think that the global story is that English has triumphed like no language in the history of the world. It has achieved a kind of lock-in. I often compare it to the QWERTY keyboard, the layout that's the basis of almost all keyboards in the world in the Roman alphabet. It may not be the best language in the world on some objective criteria, which would be hard to define objectively anyway. But now so many people speak a single language in all parts of the world. That's never been true of any language. You can name it Chinese, Latin, any other great imperial language of the past. Meanwhile, lots of small languages around the world are dying out. They die very quickly, almost 1 every 2 weeks, and that trend is accelerating. And in a century, we could lose half our languages, and I've seen statistics of losing 98% of our languages. So the world is really becoming more and more sort of kind of monochrome, and English is just an incredible story.
And how do you get better at your language skills?
Well, in foreign languages, or in a language that's in your native language?
In your native language.
Well, I think that really, again, I think owning your own way of speaking, really being comfortable in your own skin. There are people who try to sort of abandon their accents because they moved to a new city. I think that's a bad idea. I think just trying to take a deep breath, use short sentences, walk it back a little bit. I see people just tie themselves in knots because if you think about the way you used to diagram sentences in school, if you're in the middle of a big complicated construction, you're going to forget where you are. Or there's some part of the clause that you started that you can't finish because you can't remember how it was going. Slow down, take a breath, be yourself, and you will communicate so much better when you do that.
As you can see, there are specific skills one needs to attain in order to become a successful leader in this changing economy. This is Owen Herman, and thanks for watching.